On Monday, September 16th, Apple stock dropped 4% on reports that demand for the new iPhone was significantly lower than expected, and 12% lower than the previous iPhone release in 2023. On the launch day of the iPhone 16 a few days later, news outlets reported dwindling lines outside of Apple stores and significantly less interest in the new iPhone than in previous years. This came a week after Apple introduced the new iPhone 16, which they marketed as having been designed from the ground up for Apple Intelligence. But Apple is already technologically behind their key Android competitors in terms of AI. Google released Android AI back in August of 2024, while Apple has said that its AI will be dependent on third-party AI engines from ChatGPT. It begs a question that could have foundational ramifications for Apple as a company. Is Apple doing enough to stay ahead of the curve in terms of product innovation? In this video, we'll take a look back at the iPhone's rich history and innovation, and examine whether or not it has lost a little bit of its magic. The iPhone was first released in 2007 and was revolutionary in several ways. While it was not the first smartphone on the market, it was the first to feature a touchscreen that covered nearly the entire phone with only a few physical buttons. Previous phones like the BlackBerry and Nokia N95 had physical keypads or keyboards along with other control buttons. The iPhone's large touchscreen, along with the App Store, allowed for development of all sorts of apps for doing all sorts of things. Now, phones were not just for making calls and texts and checking email. They could be used to surf the internet, play games, watch videos, navigate, and much more. This new paradigm in handheld computing also coincided with the development of fast 3G and 4G cellular connectivity, high-definition LCD screens, and other technological advancements that collectively redefined what a smartphone could be. The iPhone was an instant commercial success. In the first 5 years after its release, unit sales nearly doubled every year. Apple's iPhone revenue more than 10x from $7 billion in 2008 to $78 billion in 2012. And despite the 2008 financial crisis, Apple's stock increased sevenfold during that period. By the end of 2012, the iPhone had nearly 50 million users in the US. With the decline of key competitors like Palm and BlackBerry throughout the 2010s, the iPhone emerged as the dominant smartphone maker in the world. The iPhone continued its strong upward sales trajectory throughout the early 2010s, with many viewing it as the most advanced smartphone on the market. In 2015, Apple sold a record 230 million iPhones, marking the highest number of units ever reported. However, this also signaled a turning point. 8 years after Steve Jobs introduced the original iPhone, its once revolutionary features, like the full-size touchscreen, the App Store, and the all-in-one functionality, were no longer unique. Competitors, especially Android phones, had caught up and even surpassed the iPhone in some areas. As a result, iPhone user growth began to slow both in the US and globally, with annual US growth dropping to around 5%. Between 2016 and 2018, Apple saw 3 consecutive years of lower iPhone shipments compared to 2015. Recognizing that unit sales were no longer a growth driver, Apple in 2018 stopped reporting iPhone unit sales, encouraging Wall Street to focus instead on revenue and profit growth. Since then, analysts have estimated sales volumes through other datasets and disclosures. These analyses have shown that Apple has never meaningfully surpassed its 2015 peak of 230 million iPhones sold. Last year, for example, Apple sold 223 million iPhones, about 3% fewer than they did 10 years ago. Since Apple stopped officially disclosing iPhone sales volumes, it became clear that the company could no longer rely solely on selling more iPhones to drive growth. In response, Apple developed several strategies to offset this slowdown. They expanded their iPhone lineup, releasing multiple models each year at different price points. This approach, along with the introduction of premium models like the iPhone X in 2017, allowed the average selling price to rise significantly. Since 2017, the average price of an iPhone has jumped by 38%, from $650 to around $900, which outpaced inflation. Apple also diversified its product portfolio with new offerings like the Apple Watch, which now contributes about 10% of the company's revenue. However, the biggest growth driver has been their services segment, which includes everything from their advertising business and AppleCare to iCloud, Apple Pay, and App Store fees. Although Apple doesn't break down the profitability of each part, the services segment has become a huge part of the company's bottom line. In 2013, it generated $16 billion, or roughly 15% of what the iPhone generated. By 2023, services was approaching half the size of iPhone sales, contributing nearly $90 billion in high-margin revenue annually. Apple's entire services segment is built on the foundation of its large installed base of iPhone users. A significant portion of this revenue comes from their advertising business, which is primarily driven by licensing arrangements with Google. According to unsealed documents from a Department of Justice lawsuit, Apple earns around $20 billion annually from Google just for setting Google Search as the default search engine in the Safari web browser. Since this revenue comes with virtually no associated costs, it accounts for about 20% of Apple's total net income. Despite the slowdown in iPhone sales growth, Apple has managed to maintain its overall revenue growth by finding new ways to capitalize on its vast iPhone user base, with these lucrative partnerships and services playing a key role. Apple's continued growth relies on users regularly buying new iPhones, creating a strong incentive for the company to release updated models with new features. Yet the recent iPhone generations haven't generated the same level of excitement as the earliest models. The most notable improvements in recent years have primarily focused on the camera systems. Since 2017, nearly every major iPhone release has highlighted camera upgrades as a key selling point. While smartphone cameras have become incredibly advanced, they've largely met the needs of most casual users. Beyond the cameras, improved battery life has also been a central feature in 3 of the last 6 iPhone releases. The importance of iPhone battery life to consumers was put on full display in the late 2010s with the so-called Batterygate scandal, and since then, Apple has used improved battery life as a key selling point of new iPhones. These incremental improvements, while valuable, are far less groundbreaking than the innovations of the iPhone's early days. As a result, more users are holding on to their devices longer before upgrading. Prior to the pandemic, only 26% of iPhone users kept their phone for more than 3 years. Last year, that figure had grown to 31%. In September of 2024, Apple introduced the iPhone 16, positioning it as a device built from the ground up to showcase Apple Intelligence, the company's new AI-driven software. Apple Intelligence integrates features like automatic notification summaries and advanced AI tools such as ChatGPT directly into the iPhone's functionality. Apple anticipates this innovation to be a major selling point for the iPhone 16, as evidenced by a 10% increase in chip orders compared to the previous year. However, early signs suggest that consumers may not be as enthusiastic about Apple Intelligence as expected. In a recent survey of this channel's viewers, 46% of respondents indicated that they don't use an iPhone, and among the remaining 54%, less than 10% of them expressed excitement for the new AI features. Interestingly, nearly the same number of respondents said that they were more interested in the new iPhone for the improved battery life. Overall, about 80% of iPhone users said that they were not particularly excited about the iPhone 16. On August 20th, the day the iPhone 16 hit the stores, lines at Apple stores were significantly shorter than expected. A CNBC correspondent at the Manhattan flagship store reported that last year, the line of people waiting to buy the new iPhone overflowed around the corner of the block, but at the same time this year, the line was only 1/3 full. He also said, quote, "I've talked to several folks who've been waiting in line throughout the day. No one told me they're waiting in line for artificial intelligence," unquote. Instead, he said most people were buying the new iPhone just because they love iPhones and upgrade every year, or they want the new camera and the battery life that comes with upgrading. Further pressuring the iPhone is increasing competition from Android. If Apple's planning for AI to be the new iPhone's main sales driver, they already seem to be falling a bit behind. Unlike Apple, Google has its own in-house AI engine called Gemini, which it rolled out to Android users in August of 2024. In comparison, Apple Intelligence, which integrates with OpenAI's ChatGPT, was not yet available even at the time of release of the iPhone 16 in September. In addition to the risk of the iPhone losing its perception of being the superior smartphone on the market, there may also be huge short-term risks to its profitability. As we discussed earlier, a huge percentage of Apple's profits are earned from default search engine arrangements with Google. In August of 2024, a federal judge ruled against Google in an antitrust case, saying that by paying companies like Apple to be the default search engine, they had suppressed competition from other search engines. We made a video on this ruling at the time, linked in the description below. In the video, we described some of the potential outcomes of the case. One potential outcome is that Google may be banned from paying companies like Apple for default search engine status in the future. Apple obscures the details of the services segment's financial performance, only reporting consolidated results for all parts of the segment. This has hidden the true dependence of the company on the default search engine arrangements. But based on the most reliable reporting currently available, these arrangements are so large that if the judge bans them, Apple will likely see 20 to 25% of its profits evaporate overnight. Despite the challenges facing the iPhone today, it's important to also realize how strong of a user base Apple has built up over the years. Innovations outside of the iPhone have created a true Apple ecosystem of devices, from the Apple Watch to the MacBook to the Vision Pro, that is so well integrated with things like iMessage, iCloud, and the Health app that it would be very difficult for a user to stop using it. This has led to extremely high brand loyalty. You can see this in the market share numbers for iPhone in the smartphone market, which has held steady at over 50% in the US, even as various Android phones have become more competitive. There's no indication that Apple's market position is in any sort of immediate danger. However, technology moves fast. When the iPhone first came out, it truly revolutionized how normal people live their lives, and Apple made billions. But with any revolutionary new technology, the inventor can only reap the benefits for a certain period of time before other companies catch up. Looking no further than the mobile phone market, Nokia was an extremely successful pioneer that made the smartphone mainstream. They captured over 50% of the global mobile phone market, but succumbed to the iPhone and other competitors when they failed to continue to innovate. With its lack of truly revolutionary product innovation for the better part of the last decade, the iPhone is running the risk of following a similar fate. Apple has proven to be a master at finding new ways to grow profits, but at some point they will have to find the next great smartphone innovation, otherwise move aside for someone else who will. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about the iPhone? Do you think it is in danger of becoming stale? Let us know in the comments section below. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next video. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.